What is up, YouTube? This is EbMagician34. This is episode 3 of our Bolt Twister theme deck Thursday. We have had 10 good games with this deck, and I gotta say, I am pretty thoroughly impressed. Now, we've been playing, this week we played all our games on TCG Online, and we played all of them on practice mode, so we still had good opponents, but they're kind of testing stuff out. It's not super competitive necessarily. We had a couple of competitive opponents, but most everybody was just kind of like trying stuff out, or they were newer players. But I felt like the way this deck is right now, with only one set of changes, it was kind of an appropriate environment to kind of feel it out. And we actually took a much better record this week than I thought we would. We actually won 8 out of our 10 games, only losing 2. But a lot of those, to be fair, were people just basically, we'd get a good situation going, and they just like scoop. 2 people conceded after I knocked out their Charizard EX. Like, they had a whole deck and they still could have played out of it, but they just kind of got frustrated and they were just like, forget this, and just, you know, flipped the imaginary online table and walked out. Which I will take that, but, you know, it's not exactly what I wanted for playtesting. And I even actually managed to 2-turn kill somebody with Fearow. Got the fly going on my first attacking turn, and then Drill Peck for knockout, and he didn't get any other Pokemon, so that was cool. So yeah, I just want to apologize to anybody who I might have like gotten incredible confusion hacks against, by the way, because apparently that was a thing. But to be fair, if you get confused, you should probably put some effort into retreating and whatnot. I can only do so much. Now that said, anyway. Our main changes this week revolve around trying to make ourselves a little bit faster and kind of trim the fat, because we still have a lot of that. And it basically came down to a competition between Kingler and Jellicent and Fearow and their families, and one of them had to go. And I gotta say, Jellicent is not the most competitive Pokemon. Someone actually, somewhat sarcastically, I might add, made kind of a comment about how bad they thought Jellicent was. And Jellicent is kind of not so great. But considering a change I was considering making, because I really wanted to add double colorless energy this week, his Ensnaring Prey can actually do some kind of damage, which is nice. And honestly, Jellicent kind of has my consideration right now, because Frillish has put in so much work. It's just such a good starter, and I can slap 1 energy on it and then really screw up my opponents in those first few turns, and late game it's even come in really handy. And while we're not up against super competitive stuff, Frillish has just been so instrumental, it kind of justifies things, and since I'll now be able to theoretically drop DCE in a pinch to get Jellicent powered up, to put on some damage to somebody, you know, do a little something, that I think he kind of holds out, because we're only going to cut 1 family. So I think Frillish actually kind of saved Jellicent's existence, which is interesting, but, you know, it works. And then it came down to basically a contest between Kingler and Fearow. And Fearow, honestly, without the Trick Coin, its fly is sketchy at best, and its Drill Peck is kind of pricey. But what it comes down to here is the fact that Kingler, while he's easy to evolve to and power up for 1 energy, that's all he's ever going to do is 20 damage, and that's kind of lackluster to say the least. And while he puts little amounts of damage on people, he usually sucks up 2 hits to die. You know, the Crabhammer is very inefficient, and we need to be putting our energy in better places. He doesn't really need DCE except to retreat is all he can use it for. Fearow narrowly escaped destruction this week, basically because he can use DCE, and he can use the Trick Coin, which we're still considering taking advantage of in the future. He's hanging on, and the retreat costs are nicer in this family, too. So Fearow kind of dodged a bullet this week, but he's going to have to put in a lot of work to justify his existence for next week. So it ended up being, unfortunately, Kingler, who I've always got a soft spot for the soft shell crab, but old Kingler just isn't going to quite make the cut. So the 2 Kinglers and the 2 Krabbies are going to leave. So that's 4 cards down. And I wanted to put in some energies, and to do that, we're going to pull 2 energies. We're going to pull 1 water and 1 lightning just to replace them. That doesn't mean our energy count's going to kind of stay the same for this next week, but that's okay, because it's actually worked out just about perfectly for us so far, so I don't have any big complaints. The energy conversion, as you probably already have guessed, those 2 basic energies are going to turn into 2 double colorless energies, because quite a few times during games, I've really found myself wishing for these, and if you've been playing along at home, number 1, 20 cool points, spendable wherever cool points are spendable. For having done so, you'll probably find the same thing I have, that the DCE is super necessary here. For Alligator really profits from it, and it makes Galvantula a lot more useful, because now we don't have to take 2 turns and use 2 more basic energies to power up his Electro Web. This way it'll actually be an attack we can launch into a lot more easily. So that's nice. These are definitely going to be very welcome. Black QRMEX doesn't necessarily want it that much, but he can still use it in a pinch, so that's nice. Now the remaining 4 cards are kind of scattered around, and it took a little bit of thought. One thing I found myself doing, especially because we've got kind of limited supporter resources, is I really wanted the ability to get them back. Versus Seeker helps us access our one-ofs, and in a lot of ways it just helps us dig deeper into the deck. Hit the Sycamore, hit the N. N late game is especially nice for us in a lot of situations. So this card's very welcome. The other things we're running kind of preclude us from running 2, plus we have a limited supply of supporters just yet, so for now, this week, we're just adding the 1 Versus Seeker. Next up, another card I've been really hurting for as I played this deck this week, Lysander. Because we're kind of just at our opponent's mercy for whatever they choose to play. And yes, Cobweb Trip is kind of like a Lysander, but it's before I attack. So this actual Lysander is quite useful because it allows us to do it before we attack. So this can make Black QRMEX or Feraligatr much more potent. So that's kind of the idea here for Lysander. It's going to give us a lot more ability to abuse those guys' attacks, especially Second Strike. And then it was, I was thinking Switch, because we've had a lot of times we've really wanted to get the heck out of dodge, especially with Black QRMEX, and the retreat cost is so painful. I was going to use regular Switch, but then it occurred to me that actually in this deck, the way it is, Scramble Switch is actually going to be the most useful A-Spec I think we can have, even more than Computer Search, because we're going to kind of flesh out to multiples on a lot of cards. So the Scramble Switch is going to be useful because it's going to help us surprise build up attacks out of nowhere. That can really make the energy costs on our guys turn into a boon, because our opponents won't expect to have a second Pokemon come in out of nowhere and be fully powered up. Plus it gets us out when we're in trouble or get statused and stuff like that. So it's actually going to be a pretty good card, I think. A very useful A-Spec in this deck. I think it will help us snag some surprise KOs and whatnot. And our last edition, we still need a little bit of draw power. We're going to opt for Colress. It was a close call. I would have gone for 4th Sycamore because I think that's the direction we're going. But the reason we aren't is we still have a lot of cards that are kind of important that tend to be 1 or 2 ofs, and if the situation's kind of wrong, sometimes Sycamore hurts us a little bit. So until we get a little more consistency and whatnot, and make a little more room like that, Colress is the better option because he shuffles in. And because when we get flooded hands, we frequently get lots of Pokemon still, we can easily fill up our bench to make Colress at least as good as Shauna, if not better, even in the early game. So Colress is going to be the way to go. So those are our additions for this week, and I've already got some cool ideas for the week after, but I'm going to pick up 10 games for episode 4, and in 1 week, we will see where this deck goes, and we might just be competitive yet. So until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and check out my channel for more cool Pokemon content.